No, cool,
Absolutely.
man. That's super cool. I'm glad to hear you're doing well. So yeah, and I appreciate you coming on here. Like I'm at this place, like I mentioned I'm going to I'm gonna be going to some law school in this coming fall. And so, obviously, and with conversations we've had in the past, like I'm really interested in politics, but I feel like I've struggled to know how to talk about politics and like make videos on my channel about politics in a way that's not contributing to like a crappy environment that like we all
Just
feel.
rhetoric.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I like am totally a liberal person, right? Like I fall on the left of most issues. You knew that probably from when we first ever talked about politics in
Yeah.
conversation. But like I've also grown to the point where like I don't know what it is, like, but I've just become more like understanding that the answers to a lot of big political questions are not so easily solvable, like to the point that like it's so clear that like I'm right about these things and everybody who disagrees is just like, I don't know, bad or evil or something. I don't know. And that's how it feels like people talk about it. People that I agree with a lot of things, like it feels like they're like really like misguided in their kind of view of people who are, not even just on the right, especially on the right, but just people who are even like more moderate and like, man, I kind of agree with you on this, but I disagree with you on that. Like, it seems like people feel like those people are just like evil or something. Excuse me. And I don't know. I don't. So that's really where it comes to is like I know that you're, or at least when last time we've talked about political conversations, you were on the right, and so we can get into that, and you can kind of tell me more about where you see yourself ideologically on the political spectrum. But I don't think you're evil.
That's a good start. Yeah.
Right. That's like baseline. I don't think you're evil, so I think we can have a good conversation. So yeah, welcome everybody to the For Goodness Sake podcast. I'm really excited to have my good friend Luke Pishkin on. He's been kind enough to spend some time with us and let me dissect his brain a little bit, because he is a conservative, as far as I know, who is not evil. So why don't so actually let me say like why, when I first met you, I remember like one of the first, not like I met you before this, like we met, for everybody who doesn't know, in a play freshman year, a notorious play, Measure for Measure. It's a Shakespearean adaptation of, or it's an adaptation of one of Shakespeare's plays, and it kind of became notorious, I think, from my perspective. I wasn't in the theater department as much as probably you were, but from what I heard was that like it became a notorious thing in the theater department. Like people would talk about this play that happened, and everybody knew somebody who was in it, and so kind of our branches, I think, spread out really far. So I think we can be happy about that. And so you were kind of our sound guru, our music guru. What was your like official title?
I was like musical
Music
director, something
director.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, big time, very big time. So yeah, so you were a musical director, and you handled a lot of sound music stuff. I was one of the actors in the play. We didn't really have a lot of interactions until like it was like outside of the show. And so I remember one time we went to BJ's, which was like my first. Everybody's talking about these pizookies, and I had no idea what the hell a pizookie was.
Yeah.
but like apparently I needed to try it. So we all go to BJ's. We go to like go get pizookies like when they're like half off or something. And you, me, and our man Santi, shout out Santi.
Shout out.
We start getting in on political conversation. Start talking about blah blah blah. And I remember at some point, we were talking about race and like different achievement gaps in race. And I don't remember exactly what the context was, but we had somehow gotten on like the topic of Ebonics, Black English, African American vernacular English, whatever you want to call it. And I remember you had said something like, it was at the
I remember
time.
this.
Right. So you had said something about like, oh yeah, yeah, like I read a book about that, something. And you can tell me
Oh yeah.
you can tell me what you were trying to convey. I think
Go ahead.
what you were trying to convey was like, yeah, you're right. Like, because I was defending it. I don't know how we were arguing about this, but like I was like, oh, I don't even know what I was saying. But like I was trying to defend like, Black English, right? And you were saying like, oh yeah, like I read a book about that, probably trying to say that like, I know it's not just like people are ignorant or something like that. Like that's looking back, that's the interpretation I have now. But I remember in the moment you said like, oh yeah, I read a book about that. And I was just like immediately like,
So
oh, yeah,
yeah.
like, I wrote you off. I was like, oh yeah, you read a book about it? Like, like I don't even know what I thought. Like you're some person who just like, I don't know, reads books about Black. Like, what does that even say about a person? Like, I have no idea. So I remember like immediately writing you off and being like, oh, screw this guy, and then like Santi, who was like, ideologically on my side in the argument, was like, no, like, yeah, I read that book, it's a great book, like, yeah, blah blah blah, and he had your back. And I was kind of just like, oh well, huh. And I think that like is a really good microcosm of where a lot of people are in the world today. We hear something about somebody's identities or even just about their opinions, and then like we stick a bunch of other opinions and identities on top of them because of that one statement they made. And it can often make people like me, the people who are making these judgments, freak out unnecessarily. And so yeah, tell me what you were, if you remember that conversation at all. Like what did you think about that? Like because I remember I did kind of just be like, oh really, like just being a brat.
I mean, I think I'm in the same boat as you, whereas I really don't remember what the point of any of it was. I mean, it was kind of just argument for argument's sake a lot of times, but
Isn't that how it goes?
We both like to, debate,
Yeah.
As we did a lot, and which was great. But I mean, I feel you right there of just like, it is, I feel it's nearly impossible not to just box people in. That's just everyone's instinct. It's really hard to fight that urge to hear people out. And,
Yeah.
I don't really think I'm any better at than anyone, but yeah, it was something, that talk was, we're talking about grammar or something. And I think your point was, it doesn't matter. And it was something like the grammar rules that kind of established haven't really included Black vernacular in a sense. I think it was something like that. I don't really even remember what my objection to was. That when I say it now, it sounds silly that I would ever object to something like that.
Yeah, and I don't even know if you were. Like, I don't know. I think maybe
yeah,
what you were
maybe
saying,
I wasn't, but
yeah. I think that might have been your point with the book. Like, yeah, I think you have a point there. Like, I read this book about it,
Oh, and then your gut instinct was I'm being condescending or something.
Right,
yeah, right. I mean, I don't blame you at all for having that reaction. I've had that reaction a lot. I think it's very difficult. It's really hard to talk about political issues impersonally. And I think I'm uniquely good at that for whatever benefit or drawback. So I feel like a lot of times people get frustrated with me about how impersonal I'm being with the conversation. And it's really difficult for people to say, I don't blame them at all, that like, oh, you read a book about that. I remember one time I was debating my dad about something. We get in all great sorts of conversations. And he says something like, oh, I have a degree in communication. Like, I think I know how to like debate this better than you. And I was just like, are you kidding me? Like, I thought it was so stupid.
Screw your degree,
Yeah. So, I think we've all been there where we're just, we don't want to accept whatever authority someone might have on something. You can disagree with the authority, but you can't just say, well,
screw you, you're wrong.
You can't say it's nothing. Yeah.
Right.
They're making an attempt at least to provide some substance. So yeah, I mean, just on that topic, it's just, really got to fight the urge to fall into the bad parts of our human nature, I would say. That's really
Yeah.
where the work comes politically. And what you were saying of, oh, there's all these people. The first thing that went to my mind when you said that is Twitter,
Oh yeah.
of
Oh
you
yeah.
have 140 characters or whatever it is now
Yeah.
to make the most, unnuanced, unoriginal political point so that everyone can agree with you. Like, it's just a terrible aspect of our human nature that works so well,
Right.
and it's really a lot of work to fight that. So I think it's great. I think that at least some people realize that it's such a terrible way to think about the world.
Yeah. No, you're 100%.
Yeah.
And I think that what you said about like, talking about politics impersonally is like, not only is it really hard to do in the first place, but then like if you do it, like people who aren't doing that kind of think you're being a dick,
Right.
like
Right.
because it's like it's like if you look at things in like big numbers, like like the aggregate numbers, you could be like, oh well, actually in America, most people are living better off than like 95% of the world, like X amount of Americans are living better off than like 95% of the world. Like, I think that there's a lot of real problems in the world, but in our country specifically too, but actually there's a lot of good too here. So we should build on the good, and then it's like the first thing that anybody is thinking when they hear that is just like, screw you, you don't think that there are people suffering in America? Like, you're such a jerk, and yeah, you're right, it is really hard. And I think that something that I probably learned to do better, like just having philosophical discussions, is like you kind of like in your classroom you're in a little bit of a silo, it's a safe space, so to speak, and you kind of just get to push the boundaries a little bit, and then talk about things that are a little bit abstract, and so you kind of get better at that. But then you kind of come out into the real world, and it's just
People
people.
just don't think like that. Yeah.
Not at
They're not
all,
accustomed to it. Yeah.
right, most people are just like living, trying to get by, they like, the only experience I have with politics is like hearing clips of the news when they can, or like seeing crap on Twitter, and so that's like you're saying, like that's not a healthy way to like
Yeah. And I'm not saying everyone should think like
right.
that. Not everyone can, I don't think, and not everyone should at all. Just like you said, in that university bubble,
Right.
it's so easy to just agree and be able to talk cordially and like we are
Right.
doing now.
Right.
But on the street, at your local Walmart, whatever, it doesn't happen.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So true. And so also about that, on that note of the university bubble, I remember something you said to me a while back about and this kind of leads into my first question for you, which is what or how do you identify politically, or if you want to, I'm really trying to think about like what values I hold. That's what I'm trying to narrow down values that are very important to me, some core values. And so maybe I'll pose that question to you as well. What political ideology do you think you see yourself as, or sitting between maybe a couple of them? And then also, what values do you think that you hold, that maybe you feel those values represented in those identities that you hold? So I'll let you think about that for a second, and just say that I remember you told me, like, where you're from. Montana.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. All right.
Good
All
job.
right. I was like, one of those states up there. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, you said you're from Montana, and where, when you're at your home, you're like this like moderate to like almost lefty, compared to everyone around you. And then you come to the university bubble, and you're just this like radical, rightist, extremist, relatively, so maybe tell me about that, and tell me about how, like, where you see yourself sitting, and how you think that, like, how you think your relative position changes depending on where you're at.
Yeah. I don't think libertarian is that bad of a descriptor for me. I didn't really know what to call it for a while. And then like last year I was talking to my roommates who, I obviously became notorious for talking about politics and all this stuff. And my roommate Dane was like, "You're a libertarian. Like you're really a libertarian." I'm like, "Oh, okay. I guess so." And uh, the I like, yeah, I mean, I like how you remember that. I mean, that's such a key part of me. My political identity is where I live, um, in like a red state or a blue state. Essentially, it's like, when I was in Montana, it's a red state. Obviously, people, obviously tend to be pretty conservative there, but not necessarily libertarian. They still
Right.
want government. They just want it for the things they want, which is fine.
Right.
Everyone has that instinct.
Mhm.
And but when I was there, I lived in the biggest city, Billings, so it was like a good mix. It was very healthy
Mhm.
political discussion, because you had people that have really, live in a blue area of a red state. So it was really nice actually.
Mhm.
And then I went to UCSD and it was much more one-sided,
Mhm.
which isn't, I just didn't like that aspect. It's
Mhm.
just like the political discussions in class were much more boring.
Right.
It was just kind of everyone agreeing with each other, and then I'm the only one who disagrees. And of course, many times I just disagreed to make it interesting. Like,
Of course. Yeah.
people, I have no shame about being the devil's advocate.
Yeah.
I'll look stupid so other people can think through it more. That's fine with me.
Yeah.
And I mean, of course, I never think I look stupid. I always think I'm right as a
Right.
member of the
Right.
human race.
Right.
But that's a nice side effect of being that sort of contrarian person, is you actually do get to let other people think a little bit more.
Mhm.
And then I, my core values are more conservative, I would say. Um, Personal liberty, I have a big emphasis on individualism. Like the common sort of conservative talking points. I don't think it's like, oh, I'm a conservative, therefore I think like that. Those
Mhm.
are just actually my values, and they tend to be
Right.
more on that side. And I tend to err on the side of trying to disagree with my peers.
Right.
So I would say my peers or my generation is very concerned with empathy, compassion, um, egalitarianism,
Mhm.
and sort of those urges.
Mhm.
And I try to resist those,
Mhm.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, you try hard not to be empathetic. You heard it here first, guys. This is the
Yeah.
representative of the right. I got you.
You got me.
No, I
It's
know what
hard
you
work.
mean. I like right. I really twisted your arm. No, I know what you mean. I think that you're like pointing out something that's really valuable. Like on that point about empathy, compassion, egalitarianism. I think that there is obviously. I think honestly, in the course of American history, we've seen like periods where those values have won out. In like eras. Whether I mean, you could look at like um the Great Depression, right? Where like some parts of the world during that time period, just such a dark, financial and political time in the world. Like some parts of the world decided to like turn so into themselves, into the individualist, into the screw everybody else, that like they like killed part of their own country, people that were from
Yeah.
their own country, right? And so when that was happening in America, like we had this kind of era of we're going to do everything we can to like bring everybody along. And I wouldn't say it was just uh, an egalitarian mentality. It was definitely more so than most places, and more so than America in the past. But but there's also this aspect of like, FDR said, this is FDR, who's like, ask not what you can do for your country, or ask not what your
That's
country
why
can do
what
for you,
for you.
ask
Yeah,
what you can do for your country, right? I think that was FDR, right?
I think so. You
Okay,
got me
well,
there. I don't know.
I I'll just pretend that it is, because it
Sure.
goes with my point right now. And like I bring that up because it's like there was an era of like, or a resurgence of like, let's bring everybody together and like let's make sure that like the little guys aren't stomped on anymore. But there was also this like aspect of like, hey, like, you, part of doing it all together is like each of us doing our own part, like you have to be a part of the change, like let's do it because I'm going to do my part, you're going to do your part, and like the country will improve, and I think that like right now I would like to see more of that second aspect, like almost a little bit of that individual aspect, um
Yeah.
in the whole empathy, egalitarian, compassion part of our cultural psyche right now, and I think that somebody like Barack Obama was like good at talking about that in a way that like brings those values together, like talking about things like patriotism and camaraderie in a way that also you know doesn't ignore individual roles that we all play, and so I think that you're right. Like I think that we are missing a little bit of individualism, like not individualism in the sense that like, screw you, I'll get mine, and I think that's
Yeah.
kind of how people see it. But I think that there's individualism in the sense of like, I can't wait
Indi-
for anyone else to do it for me.
Individual responsibility is
Right.
huge value. Yeah.
Right.
I loved individual responsibility.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's hard because people go through tough things, and then it makes it, you kind of feel like you're not you know like you want responsibility in order to have like more freedom, like you want to have the responsibility of driving safe. You want to like take that responsibility on because then you want the freedom
So
to
you can
drive.
drive.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
And so I think a lot of people feel like they don't have like their end of the bargain has been kind of like left, and ignored. But I do think that that's not, and I sympathize with that feeling. I empathize with that feeling. But but I do think that that still is not an excuse to like not be responsible in your own capacities. So I think that's really profound. I also want to highlight that I do think that it's an issue that you know obviously I went to UCSD too, and I think that the lack of like ideological diversity is an issue. Like it's not even like if people were generally on the left, but like they had like very nuanced, versions of what that meant to them, like what being on the left meant. Like if one person was like, I'm super for Medicare for all, and then another person was like, I'm more into like a public option. Like I want everybody to have healthcare through this and then still have a private market. And like somebody else was like the Mitt Romney kind of like center left, position on healthcare. Like let's force all healthcare providers to like make sure that you cover people and like we can pay for it in these ways. Like that would be fine to me. But I think that it's kind of like everybody's kind of just shifted into like kind of really uniform positions on things, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I think that ignores like the difficulty of the problems that exist, like it ignores like the trade-offs, right? Of like, what is the
Yeah.
benefit of having Medicare for all? Well, everybody's covered with a basic amount. What's the trade-off? Well, everybody has, there's going to be an increase in taxes, which may or may not, outweigh deductibles for some people or whatever you want to talk. And then, like some people are going to get like a little bit crappier quality services than they normally have had through their employer, but maybe that's made up for by the fact that, poor people will have more coverage and, it all evens out. I don't know, like, but you don't hear that conversation of like, here are the costs, here are the benefits, you just hear either you want Medicare for all or you're like some kind of evil corporate shill or something who just
Right.
wants people to die without
Yeah.
healthcare, so I agree with that, like.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely see that. I mean, I think that can be applied to a lot of issues,
Mhm.
you know. Um, you know a lot more about the Medicare situation than I do. I haven't thought about that enough. But what I see, kind of what it stems from, it's not that those conversations aren't being had. You know, you can go on to some university's YouTube channel of their, global health department, and they have those kind of discussions all the time, and they're experts talking in this very boring, C-SPAN kind of style
Yeah.
about the benefits and drawbacks of this model over that model.
Right.
People just don't care and are not
Yeah.
interested in that because it's
Yeah.
not entertaining.
Right.
And you know I think one thing I point out along that really sort of um disgusts me about politics. The people around me and my friends will tell you often about how very disgusted by politics a lot of times. I don't like politicians. I don't like politics. I like policies discussing social issues.
Mhm.
And that really stems from that is like sports sort of mentality
Right.
of my team and your team.
Mhm.
And I'm willing to sacrifice some intellectual consistency so I stay on the team that I think will win, or the right team. It's like, got to be more individual.
Right.
You can't just think what your parents think. You can't just think what your friends think. You really have to take that leap and, do I actually think this? Do I actually believe it? And if you have any sense, then you'll think hard about your thoughts, which isn't easy already, but
Right.
it's possible. And then it really falls back to that sort of tribal urge to just, or maybe not tribal, but that natural urge of people to sort of categorize. I mean, it's very convenient and easy to come up with these Twitter slogans of Medicare for all and stuff. Um, I don't really have a problem with people saying that, or with the point. It's just not a solution, actually.
Right.
Like, you need to actually find the best solution to the problem. You can't just do the first thing that comes to your mind. That's not really how thinking works. So, so,
Right.
so I agree with you there. People really need to resist the urge to just go to the most convenient answer, and they should start watching more of these C-SPAN type lectures on policy. And so even if it's boring, if anything else, they'll have something to actually contribute to the solution. So yeah.
Right. No, I totally agree with that. I think that you're right that it is really hard to, one, think about what you're thinking in the first place, even if it's about mundane things that have nothing to do with any, broader context. But then also to like really think about like those opinions that you have and like why you have them about important things. And I know, like, for me, I remember I felt like there were so many conversations that I had had with different people at UCSD that made me question whether or not I was right. Like, I was like still vehemently arguing with them, right? Like, no, I'm right, like going back and forth, good friend of
Yeah.
mine. But I still would go back, and those conversations would stay in my head for a while, and I would just be like thinking, am I wrong? Like, what were they saying? Was that true?
Yeah.
And I remember that, like, it literally got, and this kind of coincided with like a lot of like changes in my life, like me feeling like I needed to, do more for myself individually, take care of myself more, and be more disciplined, right? And along with that change, those big changes that were happening, I was just like, well, I'm not going to say I'm right about these things. Like, I just felt like I was just at the point where I didn't know. Like, I just couldn't kind of like bury that feeling of like, am I right? Do you really know this? Or why are you arguing this if you're really not 100% sure? And I couldn't bury those thoughts anymore. So then I was just like, kind of F it. Like, I'm not going to argue that anymore. I'm going to do what I can to learn, and I really started trying to like read more about, boring things like you're saying. And in doing that, it actually built up a lot more knowledge. Like I became much stronger and much more confident in my opinions by actually just saying like, screw it, I don't know, and then taking a lot longer to just like learn and learn and learn. And then I was like, oh, like I see where they're coming from. Here's what I think based on like what I have, accumulated inside of me, but that's like not easy, and it takes a long time, like it took like literally like 2 years before I finally had some confidence. My confidence was shaken, so it might take, your mileage may vary, right? Like might be a little easier for some people, but I just know that it's like a long process. It's a long road. And I think that, what I would like to know if you have any like thoughts on like, what would you advise for other people, to kind of be more honest with themselves? Like, how can they do that? What are some steps they could take in their lives? Including maybe just watching those boring things,
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, you get in an argument, you get in a political debate. Of course, you think you're right and you think the other person's stupid. And then you go home and then you're like, oh shit, they were right. Like, oops, that's happened to me a lot. And I'm just like, oh, I feel like an idiot. And then you're too embarrassed to admit that you were wrong, because what, are you just going to bring it up because now they can hold that over you? But embrace that. You got to, you have to realize, those are actually blessings to have the opportunity where you can actually self-correct, because usually it's very painful and it happens publicly in a shameful way where someone just completely calls you out. And but if you can do it yourself, in your room and not make that mistake again, that's great. And so I guess, yeah, that would be the advice: is have political discussions, think you're right, be wrong, and then embrace that, like just like you did. That's very admirable. I mean, that's something I definitely need to work on, is just
still
in the moment,
man.
I'm terrible. Like, I think I'm right all the time, every discussion. And it only takes for me to be myself, basically, and think about it and then get embarrassed pretty quickly by myself. And I've been fortunate to have very capable people around me as well that have been very generous in helping me realize how much of an idiot I can be sometimes. My friends have been great. Yeah. So that epistemic humility is really hard to do, but I don't really see another option. There's no other way to gain knowledge than to know that you just don't have it.
Right.
Yeah.
And what you said too, it's like, a lot of times it comes from just sitting by yourself and thinking about these things that haven't gone away, and you're like, why is this coming up? And at the end of the day, it's like, you can't lie to yourself. Like I can just get in an argument with you and be like, oh, well, F that Luke, man, like he doesn't know what he's talking about, he's blah 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 blah, screw him. And I can ignore what you said, but then I come home by myself. What am I going to call myself, an idiot?
Yeah.
If you're telling yourself something, you can't lie to yourself. So I think
this is something that young men are particularly bad at, actually, for whatever, for many reasons. I'm sure it's just, I think we tend to think we're right way too much, and then we get embarrassed, but not. We get too embarrassed to admit it, basically.
Yeah,
and,
that's so true.
And we really got to be more vulnerable in a sense,
Yes.
and just be like, I mean, it's tough. I don't have all the answers, but it's a lot easier to suggest what you can do than do it yourself. So
amen.
At least I can do that. Yeah.
Right. No, seriously. And I mean, I think at the end of the day too, like all of this is a practice, like I said, like that's what was the starting point for me. That was just a starting point, and it took me 2 years to have confidence in talking to people and like saying opinions. But it's totally the same thing for me too, man. Like it's going to be a lifelong battle in terms of listening more, talking about things that I don't know about less. It's not going to be overnight for anybody. So I think you're right. It's totally a practice. And I also think you're right. I mean, it's the feminist view of epistemology. That's what you just invented right there, or described at least. It's like, men need to, like, calm down. Like, you're not right. Because it's so funny. Like, I listen to, like, I would hang out with my girlfriend and her friends, and we'd start getting in like a political discussion, and then they would just be like, okay, like, they're just like, let it go. And I would just be like, just getting geared up,
Yeah, just enraged, like,
right.
yeah.
I'm like, I'm just getting started, man. Let's go. Come on. And then they're like,
Yeah.
whatever, it's fine, you can think that, I just think this. I'm like, no, we don't agree to disagree around here. Like, this is not, it's not how it works. You're supposed to yell at me. Like, why are you not yelling? So I don't know. It definitely is, like, generally, I think that you're 100% right. Like, I think women and men tend to, differ in this topic.
Yeah.
In general.
And it's not a bad thing. I'm not
right.
saying that, you should still do it. You got to have the argument. You can't stop talking about, like, maybe in your case, you were just you had such sort of this, like, philosophical roadblock where you felt you couldn't even move forward with yourself if you didn't just stop talking about things you didn't know about. But I'd say, I would actually advise against that as well, because you still have to say what you think, say what's on your mind, maybe do it less certain. Like, that's the key.
Right.
And I'm sure you probably did that as well. You still, I know you can't resist the urge for a good discussion, but true. You probably just were much more conscious of, your fallibility in the matters. Right. So that's great. And I think you hit the nail on the head with that one.
yeah, seriously, man. 100%. So let me also ask you, so you said you're libertarian, or, like, that's the closest thing that you could identify yourself as. Are there people in the public discourse that, like, when they talk about things, you're like, I like what you have to say about it, like, is there other individuals, I can think of a few public intellectuals, that are like, public libertarians, right? There's, like, from the philosophical discipline, there's this guy named Robert Nozick, who was, like, really big in philosophy, and he was, like, a huge defender of libertarianism, and from him, obviously that's, like, my philosophy academic world. In the current world, I think I know, like, Peter Thiel is a big libertarian. That's, I guess, the main guy who's coming to my head. So I don't know, do you have anybody who's, like, someone that you think of? Or a politician too, like, maybe.
Well, very few politicians I admire.
But that's a good start.
That's fine for me, I guess. I mean, I listen to a lot of different people. They tend to be mostly on that sort of libertarian conservative edge. I mean, I was a very early fan of Jordan Peterson, which everyone's heard of by now, and really liked him, pretty much absorbed everything he had to say. Then went through a phase where I'm like, oh, I have to take it back. And then went through another phase where, like, well, I just have to filter it better for myself. And so that happens a lot where I agree with that. So, like, I don't like most of what Tucker Carlson says, but he says some things that I really like. He has one, like, he did, like, it's like his only thing he ever did that wasn't on TV, which is probably why I really like it. It was like a book talk he had at some place, and it was, like, great. Like, he hit all the right notes, and he sort of said exactly what everyone was thinking. It was a great discussion. Peter Thiel, I've heard of. I know he's, like, a hedge fund manager. I'm I'm not that keen on economics. A lot of these people that you're
Right.
mentioning, I would say, are more sort of this economic philosophy kind of thing.
Mhm.
I don't have much claim to that. Of course, I have my own ideas.
Right.
Like I'm a big fan of Milton Friedman
Right.
and
Right.
those people, but also have found myself disagreeing with them. I think I tend to most appreciate these sort of moderate liberal people. So people like Jonathan Haidt, Sam Harris,
Right.
Steven Pinker,
Right.
these types of people that are just sort of so dullingly moderate that
Right.
it's hard to just not, fall asleep at some of their discussion points, but
Right.
but you can't disagree. I can't, at least.
Right.
So things those people tend to say really resonate with me, where they just have such a clear view, I think, of the issues, and I tend to respond best to those kind of arguments that are just very
Yeah.
thought through. Yeah.
Yeah. Those. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Jonathan Haidt and Steven Pinker, especially. I'm not like I like think that Sam Harris is incredibly intelligent. And he does like, I think that part of philosophy that's like if you're really good at philosophy, like you either learn to or maybe you just have a natural grasp and then you build on it. You like learn to like really break down arguments, like what people say, and then like keep track of them really easily over like other arguments and like, go back to different points that they may. I mean, like that's a really tough skill to do because it's like you have to keep a lot going on in your head. And
Yeah.
I think like Sam Harris is profoundly good at that. Like
Yeah. He's a
he
master at that for
he's
sure.
like
Yeah.
really good at that.
You can't sneak anything by him. Yeah.
Right, right. Like he is just like always he's very, very good at staying on point, and
Yeah.
you know, you know, I think
But
that
it's also
Steven
kind of
Pinker.
exhausting watching him sometimes because he's
Right,
so
right.
brutally on point that it's like, oh my God, I can't even, you know, you're kind of just watching him think. You're not really thinking yourself sometimes.
Right. It's like put it on 2 speed or something, man. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
like no, yeah, seriously. He does blow, break it down so much. Yeah, I mean, I haven't liked so I've liked like they've all three kind of been really critical of like the kind of current, intellectual space that we're talking about here. They've all three been critical of it. I hadn't liked how in particular Sam Harris has been very like I think that Steven Pinker and Jonathan Haidt have like critiqued this kind of like lack of critical analysis that we're kind of touching about, ideological issues that we're throwing on each other. They critique that, and they try to, I think, still be disciplined in like I don't know, not getting in on it or contributing to it. And I think that sometimes Sam Harris can like critique it so harshly that like he's actually just like revving it up, the problem up sometimes. But that's just like a pedantic like critique. I mean, just because I don't know. Maybe that's something that
So
we can.
he's so critiquing the lack of critical thought. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, it's
Kind of.
like, yeah, it's like not even just like the criticism is valid typically, but then like I think that he is like kind of like mean about it. I don't know. That's like kind of like
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
it's kind of like
Yeah.
a childish way to put it, I guess. But
I
it's
mean,
like,
I don't know him, of course, and
mhm,
I'll probably never have a chance to talk to him, but my
mhm,
inclination from listening to him quite a bit is he has a very hard time um giving any room to it's not necessarily that he's not open-minded, because he's very
right,
open-minded.
mhm,
He has a very hard time giving room to his opponents, basically.
right.
Yeah.
Like a lot, like yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that, and I think that that's not like necessarily. Yeah, I think that I can really agree with that. Like where,
Like letting them be wrong a little bit
right, 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 right.
so that you could illustrate a better point, but he just won't let them be wrong at
He's like,
all,
no, like you
which can be
need to see.
detrimental. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Look at your arrogance, like
Yeah.
So yeah, but those are good people. I think that like, and even Jordan Peterson. I think Jordan Peterson gets a bad rap. I mean, because I think he earns it, with the fights
Oh
that he
yeah, I
picks.
mean,
You know,
he's controversial.
right.
He says he's not sometimes, but I think he knows
Right. No,
he is,
seriously.
and um, I don't blame him for it. Like
Right.
that's his personality. He's very um open.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
But I think that it's like he's like a good person for people who are like young on the right, probably more likely men than women. I think that like he's like a good person for them to like for us to look at in general because I think that he's not some like evil person who sometimes he gets made out to be. Like he's kind of like you're saying, one of these like moderately right people,
Hmm.
and that's just like I don't know, it's fine. Like I think that like I said, like when I started this off, like we kind of people on the left here like tend to see like all of their opinions as so right morally and factually that like if you're not on the left, then like you must be evil, like you must be, some bad person. And I actually think that like, there are some people who I like genuinely think are bad people in the world and like conflating some like guy like Jordan Peterson with people who are like really bad in the world. I don't think that that's like good. Like I think we should like delineate like, okay, here are these people who like you don't disagree with them. Like they're just really bad, like they kill people or like they like
Yeah.
want to oppress people and like there's no agreeing or disagreeing. Like they're just
Yeah.
bad people.
Yeah. I mean, when people tell you that their motive is bad, believe them. You know,
Right.
if people tell you that their motive is good, use your discretion.
Right.
But people kind of talk about this like giving the benefit of the doubt whether we should do that or not.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't think you can avoid it to have a good discussion.
Right.
I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt right now that this isn't some just like ploy to you know make me
Expose the
I'm
right.
gonna be on national news and you're gonna edit this in some crazy way that
Right.
makes me look terrible. Like, of course
Right.
I'm giving you the benefit of the
Well,
doubt,
don't worry. My
but
following is not big enough to have an
yeah,
impact. But
that's funny. Um, yeah, I really like Slavoj Žižek.
oh
Yeah,
yeah.
he's great. He's not he's a character, an interesting
Right.
guy.
And he's like a Marxist or something, right? Like
He is, but he's like a conservative still. Like
right.
if you really listen to him, like he has a very unique way of looking at the world that I think a lot of people could benefit from hearing him out. Don't pay attention to labels,
Right.
yeah, I don't care about communists, Marxists, whatever.
Right.
If you have a good argument or not, that's what
Mm-hmm.
I care about.
Yeah. Amen,
So
man.
yeah.
I feel like I can really like get a better picture of like where you are mentally, at least a better picture than I had before, even if it's not like accurate to the whole. I'm sure it's not accurate to the holistic view of, what you think. But like I listen to a lot. I don't listen to as much of them now because I've just been like not really on like the YouTube train as much recently, but I
Mhm.
did the same thing, guys like this, all the guys you're mentioning, I like listened to a bunch of their, as many of their book talks and public
Yeah.
appearances as I could, and even so this thing from my microphone keeps bugging out, but like a lot of these guys, I totally listened to these guys, and I really liked what they had to say. I think that they actually, they were kind of like getting me down the Andrew Yang train. I remember in 2020 primaries, I was really into Andrew Yang.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was a very
Mhm.
avid Yang Gang member, and I think that he kind of like in some weird way like represents a lot of these guys, too, in terms of just kind of being less ideological, and more kind of synthesizing different positions. So I think that that's really helpful, and I think that it also kind of like shows like that how bad identities are, like at like really capturing who we are, because I kind of have this identity associated with you of like being like more conservative, more on the right, libertarian. You can use all these different terms, but like at the end of the day, you're listening to like a wide range of people. I'm sure you agree with certain things some say, and others that you're like, not so much. And I think that it just like is more representative of you as a person, but I think it also tells like that's probably how we all are. Like everybody who we interact with, we like some of the things that they say, and we don't like some of the other things that they say. And being more comfortable with this like fluidity between the labels is would be helpful, I think, for us to not like want to kill each other.
Yeah. No, I I think the individual is definitely the right level of analysis when you're trying to understand someone's morals and beliefs, and take their word for it. I mean, people say bad things. If someone's racist, they're racist. Like, I don't have any disagreement with that. But I'm not a big fan of these sort of concepts like dog whistles and sort of these implied intent. You can't imply intent. I don't think that's a good practice. Even if you're right, it's not a good practice to get into, because when you're wrong, you could be really wrong, and it could be really devastating when you're wrong.
That's really good, because I think that like I would like to break up the two things that you said, like putting them into two different boxes, right? Like, so first you have like dog whistles and maybe like microaggressions, like in one box, and then you have like implied intent, right? And like I think that like when you look at just the dog whistle microaggression part, like I would like say like it's so I'm black, clearly, or at least maybe it's not evident to everybody that I'm black, but I'm not white, which I think is obvious. And I think that going around the world in a society, right, that has like a racialized history that is mired in racism and oppression, right, I think that like there are vestiges of that a lot of different places, right? And so I think that people internalize things subconsciously, right? And to me, it's totally understandable to me that like let's say my name, right? My name is Mesfin, okay? This shouldn't be a shock, right? And throughout my life, different people have like looked at my name and like pronounced it different ways, depending on how they read it, right? And it seems totally like plausible to me that like some people who have like internalized levels of I don't know if you want to call it like racism in capital R, like I hate people of other races, or if you want to just call it like internalized, subconscious, biases against people who are not, their ideal of a, the norm that they have in their head of what a human being or American is.
Yeah.
People have read my name and like seen that it was a hard name to pronounce, or heard my name, right? And I've, oh, hi, my name is Mesfin, and they've heard that it's a different name than what you typically find in America. Although that's changing, because my Ethiopian people coming to America, man, more and more. gotta be proud. Shout out my immigrants, shout out all the immigrants in America, man. That's what makes us great. So people see that it's different, and then they're like, oh, like, that's different. Okay. Now some people might take that alone as a microaggression, which I would just, happen to say, like, I don't think that is personally. And I would listen to somebody who would disagree with me, and we can talk about it, blah, blah, blah. But I think that it's fine to think things are like outside the norm of what you experience and be shocked by them, or be like, oh, that's different, Then there's other people who are like, oh, well, that's kind of hard. Can you repeat it? Again, I don't think that's a different, I don't think that's like a microaggression. And there are some people who like, they'll be like, you know what, I'm just going to call you this, because that's too hard for me. And like, I don't know, personally, like, I know Mesfin is different than like, I don't know, Luke, right? But like, I don't think Mesfin is so much harder to pronounce, right? Your last name is Pishkin, I mean, like, I know.
Of all the, non-English sounding names. Yours isn't
Right.
that bad. Yeah.
Right, man. Like I just like I'm from a town where there was like a huge like Eastern European immigrant settlement, in the 1900s. And we have like really Eastern European names. And like there are people who have very difficult, the Askis and Uskis and Etskis and everything in between,
Yeah.
and a
Yeah.
bunch of letters before that, and yet people find it totally easy to pronounce them. Like they never question, like, oh, how do I pronounce? They'll ask them once, and then they get it, and then it's like, okay, cool, man. Like keep it pushing, And
Yeah.
and when people don't do that to me, I kind of do think like, oh man, that's like a little bit weird, Like I'm not gonna say like I don't like. I think that switching to like the implied intent category now, I'm not going to imply that they have like racist intent or imply that like necessarily this is because of their like racist subconscious and internalized racism, right? But I'm gonna think that like like that's like weird,
It's still
man. Like,
annoying.
right, it's
Yeah.
annoying and it's like rude, it's
Yeah.
impolite, right? And so I think that like when you as a person of color or maybe a woman in different ways and a person of LGBTQ background, right, like these different groups that are not represented by like an ideal of what has historically been the ideal American or the norm American, right? I think that these things kind of build up, and I think that I can understand you thinking as some woman who gets all these microaggressions, right? I can understand you thinking like, man, like this would happen to me if I were a man. And I would have to agree. If my name was, maybe not even if my name were different, like I do think that in certain cases, if I were a white skinned, blonde haired, blue eyed kid, or even dark haired, blue eyed, or dark haired, white skinned kid, I think that people would like treat it differently, like they wouldn't look at it as so much of like, oh, well, this is like foreign or outside or different, they'd just be like, oh, well, that's interesting, that's unique or whatever. But the
Yeah.
problem with that is like I can never prove which people I interact with are the people who would act differently had my skin been white.
Yeah.
And I think that
Yeah.
that's where you have problems. Like I think that you can take those microaggressions and dog whistles and notice them and talk about them in public commentary and be like, do we want to be a society who thinks that this is okay? Can we talk about how we can change that? Can we talk about maybe just being aware of it? I think that's totally fine. And I think that's very valuable into, making a more inclusive society. I don't think that we should do like implied intent on people and like assume everybody has bad faith and bad intentions, when we experience these things. But that's hard because, these microaggressions and dog whistles and everything in between are connected with a lot of other negative experiences we have with our race, our identities, our gender, etc. So, I just wanted to flag that, and see what you think about that.
Yeah. I think this is kind of one thing that the young conservative men need to be careful about and need to realize that they've really latched on to this word of political correctness
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of has split into two meanings now.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them I definitely agree with, that you shouldn't correct yourself politically, but in the other sense, I don't think um, the way that you described it, of someone being, you could say someone like that is being politically incorrect. And a lot of young conservative people, or I guess they don't have to be young, I guess they don't have to be conservative, but mostly, they tend to be on that side,
Mm-hmm.
um, is to we had this idea, oh, political correctness is bad. It's, it's cringy. It's a group attitude. Okay, I mean, I'm warm to that. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
I don't like having a group attitude. I want an individual attitude. But the political correctness that I don't like is a certain mob of people are sort of have a chokehold on what the correct political opinions in public discourse should be, and that you're shamed or outcasted if you don't align with those. I don't like that. And people use political correctness to mean that, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's being politically with it, correct, woke, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm not a fan of that kind of thing, but I absolutely am a fan of there's no excuse not to like be better and not to have the more knowledge of something. It's very embarrassing for those people that mispronounce your name or have a problem pronouncing your name, and they should be embarrassed by that. Like, they look stupid. Like, what else is there to say?
Right.
If you're a young conservative person, you're really making yourself look dumb by having a problem with this political correctness thing, like pronouncing someone's name right. And there are, I'm sure, a lot of good other examples of, okay, are you just being lazy, or are you rejecting political correctness? Sometimes you're just being lazy, okay?
Right.
And you know, fight for your values when it matters, not when, for these really stupid things like pronouncing someone's name right. That's embarrassing for them, and they shouldn't, they should be embarrassed by that, I would say.
Right. Yeah, no, yeah, I think that I can definitely agree with that. I'm also, I don't, every time a big controversy happens, which somebody, has been discovered to do something bad in the past, or, said something recently that's bad or whatever, I mean, I think that we talked about Kanye, right? When it was in the midst of his, wearing the Make America Great Again hat, meeting with Donald Trump, saying things like slavery is a choice, right? In the midst of that, I was like, I don't know if we talked about what point of, we were talking about it, but I remember I was on the side of like, well, I think that, he's not wording this in the way that I would word it. I don't like the way he's wording it, but like, let's try and think about what he's trying to say. And let's look at, like, if you think about what he's trying to say, I think that there's some point, or at least what it seems like he's implying, or what it seems like he's intending his words to mean. I think that there's some value there. Let's talk about that. So I tend to fall on the side of like, let's try and listen to intent as much as we can of what people say. Let's condemn things that we know are outright, across the line, but also like condemn in a way that's like, hey man, like maybe we shouldn't do that, like it's hurting people, it's this and that, like let's walk it back a little bit.
Yeah, let's condemn it by making the strongest argument against it as we can.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I agree with that. And I hate that, like, it sounds so like, again, one of these like really impersonal things, right? Joe Rogan just like came out with not even just came out. I mean, like, people have been exposing him repeatedly throughout his career for saying things that, like, some things I think fall way far beyond the lines of like, this is acceptable. Like, he made this joke about like, God. He made this joke about like, oh yeah, like we were gonna go see Planet of the Apes and blah blah blah. I don't know, did you see that? Like,
I didn't know.
So he made this joke.
I know there's some controversy around,
right? So I mean, people brought up him saying the N-word like repeatedly, blah blah. I mean, and like, what I would say is that like, there is a difference between using the N-word to accost somebody and like mentioning the word. I do think that in our society, we both uses have been said like, no, we're not. That's not okay, right? Like, so he, as a grown adult who's lived in America his whole life, probably should have known that like mentioning the N-word is not okay either. But like, I think that that's different than like, so I give some room.
There is a substantive difference.
Right. So I give some room. Like, my intellectual argument would be like, look, man, I understand you're not using it to, put someone down, but it's still not okay to mention. It's kind of like been your whole life, man. Like, come on, like, just don't do that. Like, you should know better. All right. And he came out with apologies. Seems like he understands that, at least enough, whatever. But there were some things that he said that were like, to me, it was just like, bro, how could you say that? So he made this joke about like, oh yeah, like, we were going to go see this Planet of the Apes movie in this bad neighborhood, right? And we're driving around, and I was like, look, are you sure, Uber? Like, are we good? Like, is this the right place? And he's like, yeah, you're good. And I walked out of the Uber, and excuse me, and it was like, we were in Planet of the Apes, man. Like, there were just black people everywhere, and like, blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, dude, what? Like,
wow.
That's pretty bad, man. Like, I don't know, if you're sitting around with your buddies and like you say that, and then like, one of you guys in private laughs, and you're like, listen, that's too far, Mesfin, like, take it back. All right.
Yeah.
Like walk it back a little bit. Then it's like, all right, there's the line. I get it, like, that's, that's understandable for like somebody to say that and like, walk it back. I think that for somebody who's got like such a big platform and has all this like, fame attached to his name. It's like, it's hard for people to see that and then just be like, oh yeah, well, that's just fine, like just walk it back, man. And so I don't know, I think that these like conversations about wokeness and political correctness, I think a lot of times like people do not give people the benefit of the doubt and just like try and interpret them in a generous way. Like I mentioned with Kanye, I think that a lot of things that he used to say, I think people would just kind of like brush off, and I wish that people would give him more of the benefit of the doubt. And then there's like situations like this where it's like, okay, dude, that was clearly racist, man. Like it was like, you could laugh at it, and like I'm not saying that like, it's there's not like some humor in it, but like it was racist, and like you should not be saying that on like a podcast to like the world, just because it's not nice, it's like, it's just like, not because it's like so evil or heinous, but just because it's like, it's not nice. It's like, it doesn't, that's not the culture people want to live in, with Black people being compared to monkeys, like,
Yeah.
And so I get why people get riled up about that, and like,
I don't disagree with that. One thing I wanted to mention was, I think it's really helpful when conservative-minded people, I guess you could put me in there, given my generation, I'd say I'm at least more conservative than many people my age,
right,
in America. And it's very instructive for people like me to critique and call out people like me.
Right.
That really helps us, I think. And one of the things I would critique about sort of conservatives is you can't complain about people having an emotional reaction to something by having an emotional reaction to it. You can't get upset at someone being upset about something.
Right.
Like that's what you're arguing against. It's silly. So you say something that someone disagrees with, and this is something I've fallen into a lot, obviously. Say something that someone disagrees with, they disagree with it. You want to make your point. That's what you think is right. Good, great, do that. And then they get upset. They get really upset at you. You have to deal with that with grace. You have to realize that, and not like in a childish way, like, oh, this is some child that I have to treat like an emotional being. It's like, no, everyone has that. You can't, you have to let people respond the way they do, then help them, I don't know,
maybe see you better,
figure out something else, like, or if people, you can't be mad at them back. Like you can't say something that they disagree with, they get mad about it, and be like, you shouldn't get mad about it.
Right.
Okay, now you're mad about their attitude. Like it's very hypocritical. So
and
you got to stop doing that. You got to be like, I'm saying something to this person, they disagree with me, they're probably going to get mad at me. I'm going to deal with it gracefully.
Right.
They can be mad at me. I'm going to maintain my temper. I'm going to continue saying what I believe, but I'm not going to, run off, like you said, like start putting all these ideas onto them about how they're silly, emotional, liberal people. Like, you can't do that. That's not helpful.
And I think that there are people who are like, they know that they're like contrarian or like controversial or something, like somebody like Jordan Peterson, or like somebody like Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro is actually a better example, I think, honestly, because like Ben Shapiro is somebody who, like, honestly, if you had him in a conversation with like somebody who's like, he had a great interview with Ezra Klein, right? He had a great interview with, Andrew Yang, right? When he gets people who are like really intelligent on the left, or like, moderate left or anything like that, like he has great discussions with them.
He's great. Yeah. He can really behave himself when someone else in the room is
an adult
himself. Yeah.
But he never like takes charge as like the person who's gonna behave himself, like.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And it's like he
never calms it down when he's talking to college kids, that he needs to do that. Yeah.
Right. He'd rather like go to college campuses and like make fun of these people who he's clearly smarter than on these topics, because they've thought about them for like a year, and if that, and they probably think about it in a very shallow way because their brains aren't even fully developed. And then like when they like are wrong, or when he gets a good point on them, he like wants to like make fun of them even more. And like,
Yeah, you can't just rub it in. Yeah,
right.
it's not helpful. I that's something I have really hated about the way he approaches political discussion. Is just another thing. I mean, I've also been a big fan of. I don't think many people can deny his intelligence and his,
Right.
political or debating prospects.
Right.
But one thing that I've been critical of him is he seems to have boxed himself in much too far. That his, I guess this is part of the reason I don't really like politicians or people who make their money, is because now you are beholden to the people that pay for your opinions.
Right.
If he ever had some radical, epiphany about something, say he changed his mind about abortion, he wouldn't. He's like almost unable now
Right.
to have those epiphanies.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really detrimental, I think, to him. He sort of really boxed himself into a certain ideology that if he ever came out like, I'm actually pro-choice now,
Right.
he wouldn't have a career anymore, probably.
Right.
Or much less of one. So that's a problem. He really should not. This is why I like people that don't do that, like Jonathan Haidt.
Right.
He hasn't done anything like that. He hasn't gathered a certain ideological crowd. He could come out as pro-life or pro-choice or pro-Medicaid or whatever, and he wouldn't lose or gain any subscriber. He'd lose some that disagree with him and gain some that agree with him. It'd be very even.
That's very good. That's very, very important. Like, and I think that even to take it a step further of what you're saying, like, I think that Ben Shapiro locked himself into the point that if he said the same opinions that he said with like less vitriol, then he'd lose, support and subscribers. And it seems like if you look at like, and if you look at like his business model, like on Facebook and just different areas, with the Daily Wire, like it seems like he's, look at the headlines of the Daily Wire, like it seems like, or the people they hire, it seems like he understands that that's what gets him, more clicks, and he's decided that like it means more, or it's more important to him to like focus on that business model than like maybe the like intellectual purity or the ideological purity of like just being like a gracious, conservative guy.
Yeah, he should have been a philosophy major, not a political science major.
Right, man.
He's a great mind.
Like,
he should have been a philosopher or something. Yeah,
seriously. If he was just like at some like, I mean, if you were at like UCSD and you were like the crazy right-wing guy at UCSD, like he would have like some of the best classes and like would just be like so prominent, and like maybe he'd probably make a lot less money, but like it would be like much better for
his
the
impact
world.
I think would be much better on
the
political society.
Well, and I'm glad that you like already had mentioned those things, because two things that I was going to ask you was which you already have touched on, like just in our natural flow of conversation, was one was what is a critique you have about liberals or people on the left. It seems like we've kind of touched about different areas of that, and then also just what was a critique you have with conservatives, and you've mentioned that now. So how much time do you have? I have just a couple more questions. We could probably go forever, but if you need to get out of here soon, like what's
Yeah, we could wrap it up in the next couple questions.
Sweet.
I don't have anywhere to go, but
Sweet. We'll try and not take up your whole day. You've already been gracious enough with almost an hour and a half, so we'll try and keep it rolling. So here's like something that I think is I think that most of us generally like do actually agree on like what problems exist in the world, and like even if we disagree about like how to solve them, I do think that most of us agree on their importance and the need to solve them. So tell me what are some of the biggest issues you see in the world, and maybe some ideas of like how you would like to go about solving them if you could just like wave a magic wand and like get people to do what you wanted.
Big issues. Tribal tendencies of people. So kind of what we've been talking about. If people really want to like and agree with people that are like them and agree with them. I think that's a big problem that will sort of wreak havoc more than it has so already. I mean, it has history is that, right? History is in-group preference killing a bunch of people. So let's stop doing that. That would be good. How to stop doing that? Some biological change would be nice. If we could just change our human nature, that would be like the magical solution to it. I don't think that's possible, really. So it has to be some sort of behavioral mass. I don't know what it's going to be, but for people to overcome those bad parts of human nature, that is really a huge problem. Another big problem, I think, is sort of government overreach, not just in the typical, convenient way that conservatives like think about it, of like communism, Marxism, like authoritarianism, people that have, their hand on the nuclear buttons, that are kind of just these crazy madman people. The more globalization that happens, the more likely, the more variance, or I guess the less variances there is that risk could happen of someone just having all the power in their hand. I really want to avoid that. How to avoid that? I think people should be much less concerned with expansion, globalization. Multiculturalism is probably not the right word, because that has kind of a different meaning right now. But do you know what I mean by
cosmopolitanism? Maybe.
Sure. Yeah, that's much better. Yeah, like good fences make good neighbors, on that line, but on a much bigger scale. Yeah.
Right.
I'll stop there.
That's super so interesting, and I'm glad you said it, because actually I'm very concerned about nuclear war too. Like, not like I don't know. I've been getting into this movement of like, I've been finding people in this world of what they call like long-termism and the effective altruism community, and like they're basically trying to find like how they can.
I've heard of them. Like in Seattle, there's some group of people that are that's what they do.
Yeah. That's it's
cool.
super interesting. They're like really trying to do, like, for people who don't know, it's like a group of people who like effective altruists are like trying to like use science and like numbers and empiricism to like figure out how to do the most good that they can do, right? And then also for like the long-termists, like they're people who are thinking that like no matter what way you look at it, like there are more people, as long as like humanity continues to like thrive, there are going to be more people in the future than like will ever be alive in America or in the world right now. So like by magnitudes, and like if there's 7 billion today, if we grow to like 9 billion in like 50 years and like 100 years, then like 9 billion will outweigh the 7 billion today. And like, more and more and more, you'll just continue to grow. And so the idea is that like you want to do things that will make the future for those people better. And the more we can do that, that will be good. And one thing that like both worlds focus on is like, if we could do a little bit to like reduce the chances of a nuclear war happening, that would go a long way for like people now and for people in the future, because that would be really bad. And yeah, I don't know. It's funny because I actually have completely come on the opposite end of what your kind of idea has been, of like the good fences make good neighbors. I've come to the point of like thinking that more cosmopolitanism, more interconnectedness, globalization, both like economically and politically. I think that like might and like less dominance of individual states like might actually be the way to reduce the need for like violence as a means of solving problems. Like if the UN were as powerful militaristically as America, like maybe there would be less wars, that's kind of my theory on
Yeah,
it.
you need, I don't think there's any avoiding that powerful people will happen. That's really hard to avoid unless you're just gonna, completely restrict people, which I'm not a fan of. What you want is for the really powerful people to be good and to have good intentions and to not want to have violence. So, you know, of course, I'm not a fan of dictatorships, but if I had to have a dictator, I'd want them to be
Good.
generous,
Right.
yeah.
Right. And I think also like the other opportunity to like solve them or like avoid bad, really powerful people is like you have, I mean, like, not my preferred founding American to refer to in public, but Madisonian governance, right? Like the checks and balances, if you have a person who's in power who is bad, because that might just, you can't avoid it like you're saying, but you have a way to check that so that they have limited power, it becomes less likely, and so I don't know, like it's interesting that, like, I mean, this is exactly what I was kind of hoping for in a weird way, is that like we both seem to be concerned about an issue that's very important to us, and we both kind of have come down on different sides of it, and and actually we could literally talk for hours about just this, I think, because like it's just so interesting to me anyway.
Well, yeah, I'll just give you a one sentence synopsis. My sense is that the more connected people are, the more chance that someone could wield all their power. Okay. But if people are more disconnected, then it's much harder for one ruler to come and gather everyone. That's kind of just my sense. Yeah.
That's true. I mean, I think that that's a fair way of looking at it. I think that also you could look at it like the more connected people are, the less incentive they have to like blow people to smithereens, blow one another. I mean, like,
yeah, sure.
if fence or not, if we share a plot of land, next door to each other, and like anything I do is gonna like, maybe I don't want you growing crops or something. I don't know, like whatever. I'm bad at these metaphors, I think, but like whatever, like anything I want to do to harm you could like impact me because of how close we are. Or let's say we share
there's some deterrence.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, but it's definitely, I mean, I'm inspired by, Germany and France, and coming together after, years, centuries of hating each other, and now being like, I don't know, friends, like, I don't know. I think that like Europeans all still have rivalries with each other, but like, they're not like trying to kill each other anymore, so, but that's the hopeful story. I mean, there's the Chinese example of, bringing them closer to us economically and the West economically. And then, they're still trying to like gun for us, so, there's definitely counterexamples, but yeah, that really is exactly what I think is important, is that like, I don't think this is an issue most people care about that much. Unfortunately, like maybe critical race theory is probably more salient to them, but I do think this is exactly what's important about having discussions with people, is in good faith, whatever that means, is we start to see that you really do care. It's not like you're just some person who's just like, screw everybody who is not me, I guess, I don't know, or not you. It's not like you just don't care about people. It's like you have a different way of looking at a solution, and part of like being we're blessed to be in a democracy, in a state, in a country where we can not kill each other in order to get laws passed or whatever. Part of that is like we have to come together, hammer out our differences, and find like some compromise that we can reach to go forward. So yeah, so that's super exciting. I'm just looking over to see if I have any other
quick questions,
right.
lightning round.
Yeah. Give me what have you been listening to recently? What music have you been listening to?
Big fan of sort of electronic future funk. If like look up that on Spotify, I like that a lot. also I always listen to classical music. I'm classical music nut. So those yeah.
True musical director indeed. So I've gotten into like doing the classical music when I study, and like I always like at first I was just listening and I was just kind of like, okay, whatever, I could just tune it out. But like as I got into it more, I like really started to like certain sounds, and like I would be like, I can't even listen to this right now. Like I'm really into like the French horn right now, and like the oboe. I like these like weird like deep horn sounds, you know.
You should listen to Bolero by Maurice Ravel. That's like every kind.
Valero.
Ravel is Bolero, yeah, Bolero. It has like every horn in it. It features like every horn, so
okay,
you get all of them.
All right.
Yeah.
And that's Ravel, like
Ravel, yeah. Well, it's Ravel, Ravel, yeah.
Right. All right, sweet. I love that because, like I said, I mean, I've just been so into these horns for some reason, like, and I always thought of myself, you know, like everybody. I don't know. I think every kid, like, you know, just thinks to themselves like the cool guitar player, you know, like, and I just like, no, this is not me, man. I need me an oboe, you know. That's what people like the saxophone because it's like the coolest thing ever, you know, like the jazz saxophone.
Yeah.
You know? But like I was just like, no, these oboists, you know, like these guys with the French horn, you know, they know what they're doing. You know?
I'm a fan.
Okay, and give me some shows or some movies to watch because I'm always looking for some with the girlfriend, man. We're always trying to find.
So I'm a avid chess player. I love chess. And
I will actually have to play you sometime because
cool.
I like last year I started playing with my friends and like they were all kicking my butt, and then I just got really good and I started kicking their butts, and now nobody plays me back. But you know, I'm still like amateur, so like, you know, my pool is small, so I have to keep branching out and growing.
But I recently got my girlfriend into it, and she's pretty good at it and likes it. So we've been watching The Queen's Gambit.
That's great.
Is a show on Netflix that I watched twice before, but it's a great show. Yeah.
That's a really good one. I'm gonna have to you're gonna have to give me one more because I've already seen that one.
Let me think about one maybe you haven't seen. Of something I watched, you gotta watch Planet Earth 2.
Okay.
The Planet Earth series. Those are very underrated.
Are those like the David Attenboroughs or whatever?
Yeah. Nice. I mean, people think, oh, it's nature documentary, it's boring. They're really good. They're really great. You know, great to watch with the girlfriend, definitely.
Nice. Well, and we're big, you know, typical California liberals into the environment, into Earth, you know. She's a vegan, I'm vegetarian, so you know.
That'll be great. Then,
Sweet, man. And then you said Planet Earth 2. Is that like your one that's like the best?
Planet Earth 2 you can find online for free. So.
Okay. Sweet.
So yeah, that's what I did.
Sweet. All right, man. Well, that's perfect. I really appreciate you giving me so much of your time, man. Like, I just totally randomly hit you up and you were just like, let's do it. So I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, it was a blast. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And, you know, good luck in this PhD program. That's exciting. Keep, you know, dreaming big, because what we need, because I'm also a big fan of progress and like, you know, scientific discovery. Like I said, I leave all the actual discoveries to other people, but I like to think about this stuff. And I think that we really do need more people to like just dream freaking big, you know. I was actually just reading an article that was talking about how, you know, one of the Wright brothers commented to the other brother, like in, I don't know, 1911 or something. He was like, yeah, getting like anything heavier than air to fly in, you know, in the air is going to be impossible. We're not going to be able to do it. And then 2 years later, he was like, we did it. You know, the president, Teddy Roosevelt, wants to like come on our flight, man, on our plane, you know? So
that's cool.
Yeah. So I'm really big into like getting, like, I like to dream big, and like people think I'm crazy for it, and that's fine. But I want other people to like, you know, dream bigger, especially, you know, people like you who are like in a field that you love, and like you really have an opportunity to make real change to the world. So just like, you know, don't think you're crazy, just dream as big as you can, because you really could have an entirely different impact on the world. And for my life, you might be making my life easier. Everything you do just make my life easier. And I just want my life to be as easy as possible. So I need you to dream bigger.
All right. Well, I'll try my best.
All right, man. Well,
And,
sweet.
Good luck with grad school, law school.
Yeah, thank you
I
so
know,
much.
I mean, you're definitely made for that kind of endeavor. So I know you'll
Thank you.
really flourish.
Thank you. I'm glad everybody, since I've like told people that I was applying and stuff, everybody's been telling me, yeah, man, I knew you were gonna go to law school, man.
Yeah.
Like, I knew. And I was like,
Yeah.
I didn't know. I was like in existential crisis. What am I doing in my life? I should have just
No,
listened to you
if
guys.
anyone should, you should. So
Well, I really
yeah.
appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks so much again, and I'll let you know when I post this, and you'll be able to check it out. So I hope you'll enjoy what we've talked about so far, because I did.
Awesome. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Take it easy, man.
Bye.